started. We can walk her through it. Okay, I'm gonna make you the host so that you can get your camera on. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, I'm making you the host. Now, can you get your camera on?
Let's see.
There you are.
Hi guys. I'm so sorry.
No,
you would think we would have I would have mastered the whole Zoom thing by now.
It's
so sorry for the delay.
Nobody's mastered it. That's the problem. So I'm gonna have you just make me the host quickly. So go onto my my picture at the top. You'll see like 3 little dots, and you should be able to make me the host. Okay, we're good. We're live. Okay, everyone. I'm going to now share my screen. Amazing. Thank you for everyone's patience. Okay, does everybody see my screen? Do you see my screen? Vanessa, do you see my screen? Oh no, I didn't share it yet. Let's share my screen. All right. There we go. Okay, there we go. Is everybody able to see? Okay, so we're gonna get started. So everybody, I'm sorry for the few technical difficulties, but we're ready to start. And I definitely like to, end on time. So we're gonna try to catch up, but I want this to be, I wanna still continue to have as many good conversation as we have in the past. We actually have a lot of new people here tonight. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you all for signing up for tonight's webinar. I'm really, really excited about this topic. I've always really been so interested and passionate about nutrition through the life cycle in general. And being that this is International Women's Month, I thought what better way than to talk about the women's nutrition through the life cycle. I think it's a really, really important topic. I think it's something that pertains to really everybody, whether you're a man or a woman. It's important to know, and I'm just really excited about it. So I'm gonna start by introducing myself, introducing Fair Meals. As I said, we have a lot of new people here tonight, so I want to talk a little bit about that, and then we will introduce Vanessa, who is our moderator for this evening, and we will get the webinar started. Just before we start, Vanessa will be manning the question box, so feel free to send in any chats, any questions you have through the chat box, and she will ask them as the webinar proceeds through the night. So we don't have to wait until the end. If I see we are running out of time, maybe we will, but we usually have time, and it usually is a lot of fun. So without further ado, we're going to begin. So again, we're talking about women's nutrition through the life cycle in honor of International Women's Month. So we're gonna just introduce ourselves. We're going to talk about prepubescent and puberty, childbearing and pregnancy time, as well as postmenopausal and aging. I feel like there's so much emphasis always on like the childbearing and the pregnancy years, and even the prepubescent and puberty years. But postmenopausal and aging kind of doesn't get so much attention. And there's actually in terms of nutrition, there's so much that is important there. So I'm really excited to be talking about that tonight. We're also going to be speaking about affordability, being that we're Fair Meals, and affordability is one of the 3 umbrellas that we, that is so important to us. We're going to be speaking about some of that as well. And for those of you who have been here before, know that I always like to share recipes, so we'll be doing that. And then some questions. But, like I said, questions can come as we go on. So a little bit about Fair Meals. We are a free online platform that offers families healthy, simple, and affordable meal solutions. We are a 501c3 status nonprofit, and our nutrition education, our programming is focused primarily on nutrition education, as well as group and family counseling. Our mission is to empower families with the nutrition education, step-by-step recipes, and budget planning to make meals healthy, easy, and affordable. And our vision is to combat America's chronic disease crisis by making healthy food an option for every family. So I am Arielle Kestenbaum. I founded Fair Meals to offer nutritional guidance and easy recipes that empower families to eat well on a budget. I'm a registered dietitian, and I received my Master's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics from NYU. I'm also a mom, I'm a wife, and I really know how difficult it can be to keep meals healthy and exciting, but that are also convenient and affordable, and honestly, that don't take a long time to make. So with this resource, I really hope to help families from all walks of life. And then Vanessa, so Vanessa Freeman, she is tonight's moderator, and we're so excited to have you here, Vanessa. She's the founder of One Woman for All, which is a nonprofit based in New Jersey, and it focuses on women's empowerment. So again, an amazing thing to be speaking about this month in International Women's Month. She's also a news anchor on Prepubescent and NYC. Prior to joining the PICS team, she was a national host and news anchor for Cheddar News and Cheddar Business, and her work can be found across broadcast, print, and digital media spaces, and she is a wife and a mom herself. So Vanessa, I'm gonna let you speak a little bit, and then we will proceed with the webinar.
Great, Arielle, thank you so much. I'm honored to be with you guys. As you mentioned, I am a news anchor, but I recently launched a 501c3. As you know, it is a labor of love, but I'm so excited about it. It is geared towards women's empowerment. And our core mission is really to improve the lives of women and girls, specifically for right now in the New York City and New Jersey area. The key mission is to support them, enrich them, and connect them with the resources they need to thrive and really just show up and present as their best selves. So in line with that is our first big initiative, which is the Painting Power campaign. And it's designed to raise awareness about the lack of underwear donation, specifically for women and girls. So we're very excited about that. That's our main push going into this year for 2022. But we also raise funds for career and social counseling, as well as mentorship programs for women and girls in the tri-state area. So I'm excited to be with you, Arielle, especially as, you know, our missions kind of intersect as it relates to health and wellness for women.
Sure. For sure. Thank you so much. That sounds amazing. So really, thank you so much for being here. And I think you're going to have a lot of really great tidbits to go along with, you know, tonight's, what we're speaking about tonight. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. So for those of you who are not new, know that I've never been able to kind of separate the polling, but I've actually figured out how to do it. So as we get to each topic, I'm going to be launching a new poll. So that's really exciting. So we're going to get started, and we are going to be first speaking about the female reproductive system. But before we do that, we're going to do two questions here. So everybody take like a few seconds to answer these two questions, and then we'll kind of get going there. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to give everybody a few more seconds. We have a lot of people voting, so this is good. Okay. So people tell me sometimes that the people's feedback has been that I end the polling too quickly. So I want to give everybody a few seconds. I'm going to give everybody a minute. So we have about 10 seconds left. And then we'll end this one and we'll start talking and we'll get through these questions. Okay, I am going to end this poll. So we did pretty well here, and I'm happy because we have a mix of answers for the second question. So the first question is, what is one very important nutrient during the prepubescent stage? And everybody actually got this right. The answer was iron. Iron is going to be very important. Vitamin C is going to be important for everybody, but it's not so specific to that prepubescent stage. And I'll talk about, as we go through the slides, I'll speak about why iron is so important. It's actually important for every stage, but why is it so important during this stage? And then what are the general caloric needs for the prepubescent years? And we're going to see that it really depends a lot on weight and height and so many different factors. But generally speaking, 1,800 calories, it's going to be around 1,800 calories. It can be more, it can be more like 2,000 calories. It can be a little bit more than that as well. And it can be a little bit less, but 1,200 is generally too low, especially for really for most people, but especially for that prepubescent stage. And 3,000 is typically too high for most people. So great job, everyone. So the female reproductive system. So the female reproductive system plays a large role in women's nutrition. And the reason being is that the menstrual cycle, it causes so many hormonal fluctuations that influence growth and metabolism. And obviously food has so much to do with metabolism, and hormones kind of play a huge role in metabolism. So all of those kind of, play a role in each other, I should say. So pre-pubescent and puberty. So changing bodies and meeting nutrient requirements. So these ages are generally like ages 9 to 11, right? Give or take. Some girls go through puberty a little bit earlier, some go through a little bit later, but this is a pretty average age. So patterns and behaviors, right? So there's some outside influences that are really, really important during this time. So we have peer and maternal influences become greater during this time period in regards to food choices and eating behaviors. So as I can't really speak as a peer, or I guess I can, but really more as a mother, it's a really, really important, you play a really, really important role here. As it pertains to, being a good influence on how, relationships should be with food. And a lot of people that I've worked with, in my professional life, are really affected by their mothers, and really affected by their parents and by their peers, from really such a young age, from these prepubescent 8 times. So it's really important, like as older women, as mothers, or as caregivers, or just generally, somebody who people look up to. It's important that we teach them healthy relationships and positive relationships with food and body image and everything of that sort, because it can have a really lasting effect. So media influences also, we're going to see as we get through those pubescent years that media is going to play more of a role. But especially now, I feel like kids have cell phones at like 6 years old, and they're like on Instagram by 7, on social media. So media is starting to play a role a lot earlier than it has in the past, right? So in the past, I would say, magazines, newspapers, commercials on TV, that was playing more of a role. But now really social media is playing a role, and it's playing a role at a much earlier age than it used to. And Vanessa, I'm curious what you think. Like, do you agree with that? What's your say on this?
Absolutely. Just when you look at some of the TikTok, like the trending recipes, the trending, like the food challenges, it directly influences what we're intaking and what the kids are intaking, because those social media apps particularly appeal to those in this 9 to 11 and the early teens. So there's a strong social media influence.
Yes. So they're, the girls in this age group really can become so preoccupied with weight, or just, working out and exercise. And like you mentioned, like the TikTok, I didn't even think about the food challenges. I was just thinking about, people who are on TikTok and and all of the body image, things that we talk about there. But there's really there's so many food challenges, and just talking about things that, calories and nutrition labels and all those things that actually professionally I don't agree with speaking about to a 9 or 11-year-old girl. But it's out there. It's all of this information's out there. So, as good as social media can be, there's obviously things that are not as good. And we're seeing a lot of this media influence on these girls and on some of their like eating patterns and some of their eating behaviors. So generally, we spoke about, so the energy needs, they'll really vary depending on their age, their height, weight. There's so many different factors that come into play. Also their level of physical activity, right? If there's a girl, let's say, or, who's like on the basketball team and they're on the volleyball team and they're all this, their energy needs are generally going to be higher. They need more calories than somebody who is only in, choir and, they're not as physically active. But generally speaking, 1,800 calories is around that ballpark number. In balanced diets, girls in this age group are encouraged to eat a variety of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, dairy, protein. They really shouldn't be restricting things. There's a lot of girls at this age that, a lot of them want to start becoming gluten-free and they want to start becoming vegan. And if it's for real, health reasons, that's okay. Or if it's for, beliefs, then that's okay. But a lot of the times these diets, and I'm using the word diet because they truly believe a lot of, preteens truly believe that these are diets and these are going to help them lose weight and look better, look thinner. They end up taking out some of these foods that are really important for them. So it's important that, if this is something that they decide, as parents, as caregivers, as whoever is as doctors, it's important to understand, well, why are they actually doing this? Why are they becoming vegan? Why are they taking out, these essential food groups, right? So there's important nutrients they need. There's zinc. So there's an increased need for zinc because it's important for, cell health and for immunity. Zinc's going to be really important. We know everyone's like taking zinc, zinc supplements, during the COVID era, everyone's been taking, but zinc's really important. It's something we can get through food. And, taking out some of these food groups, we're going to be eliminating some of these very like zinc rich foods. So it's very important that we, we really, really speak to our kids or, whoever it is that we know, why is it that they want to, follow these specific diets, or rather these specific ways of eating. Iron's again going to be very important throughout the life cycle, but here it's important specifically because it's important for blood health during this time. So what we're going to see during puberty, it's important because of, through the menstrual cycle, we lose a lot of iron, but here it's actually, again, kind of bringing up those stores a bit of iron, but it's also just for general blood health as well. And then calcium. Calcium's going to be important because we know bone health, there's never too much that we can do for bone health. Calcium's important from the time we're a baby, right? Drinking milk, having cheese, making sure, even with my own kids, we're always, the doctor's always asking, oh, are they eating enough cheese, eating enough yogurt, having enough dairy, having enough milk? And it's because calcium is super, super important, and it's needed to develop strong bones for later in life. And it's a super important nutrient that we get in early to make sure that that we have enough stores later in life. And by the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask any questions. Like I said, Vanessa will be manning the chat box. Okay, so before we get to puberty, does anyone have any questions? I guess not. Okay. Okay, so what is puberty? So puberty is the biological capability of reproduction due to hormonal changes that stimulate maturation. This critical period of rapid growth is strongly dependent on adequate nutrition. So nutrition is really, really important always, but it's really important during this time because malnutrition, so not having enough of the important nutrients that we need, it can delay puberty, and while obesity can trigger early puberty, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting proper nutrients, we're eating right, we're eating a balanced diet so that we're not, bringing on puberty too early, but that we're also not bringing it on that we're not, triggering it to be too late as well. And girls typically go through puberty around the ages of 11 to 14. Like I said, this varies. Some girls go before, And some will go a little bit later. So this really, really varies. But again, this is just like a ballpark and an average. And let me see, I think I had a poll here. Let's see. Okay, so I'm putting out, there's one question here for puberty, and you guys will probably all get this right because it was similar to what we spoke about before, but just take a second to answer this question. I'm going to give everyone like 10 more seconds. Okay, so everyone got this right. So what are likely some external influences on eating behaviors during the puberty years? So yes, it's both A and B, right? Media and peers. We're going to see, we saw before that peers and maternal influences and, media was starting to become something that was, this outside influence. But we're going to see it more, and peers are going to be even more of an influence than they even were in the prepubescent years, right? Because they're spending more time as they get older. They're spending more time with friends during mealtime. At school, they're more cognizant of what their friends are eating. If they're going to a school that they bring their own lunch, what are they bringing? Why are they bringing this? So, there's a lot of things that, so, all right, I just lost, oh, there we go. I lost the camera. So, where'd that go? Okay, there we go. So Vanessa, what are your thoughts here?
With puberty, it's tricky because it's for women in particular, it's a time when we're dealing with hormonal changes, which trigger some weight fluctuation. And I know a lot of parents may be a little concerned. They may be wondering, it's hard to gauge because you're concerned because you think maybe this means your child may have a predisposition to being more heavier set or obese, but you obviously don't want to trigger any unhealthy relationships when it comes to food and their diet. So what do you suggest when we're looking at that age range where we obviously don't want malnutrition, which delays puberty, and we don't want excessive weight gain, which will bring it about sooner than it should be happening? What are your suggestions from a dietary standpoint? Because that's a very gentle age range.
Yes, no, I agree. So we're going to get to that in a second, and we're going to see, on that slide, we're going to see exactly ways, but I would say the general answer is eating a balanced diet, right? And, starting with the physical activity, but there's like a fine line because we don't want to get too much into their heads, right? We don't want it to be like, well, you need to be, I don't like to use the word working out with girls that age. I've worked with girls across like a few different age ranges. And they always bring the terms, well, my friends work out and they send, Snapchats and when they're working out. And I'm like, I don't like the term working out for a teenage girl. To me, it's like, I don't love that term. So
and when you talk about social media, now working out has become like this workout culture thing, right?
Exactly. So it's almost like, I like to use the phrase physical activity with them, right? Yes. And bike riding is a form of physical activity. Taking a walk with your dog or with your friend, these are all forms of physical activity. And I like to make sure they know that, because if you keep using the proper words and the proper terms are also really, really important at this age, right? We want to make sure that they're not, going to take what we say and then run with it, but run with it in the wrong way. Do you know what I'm saying? We want to make sure that they're going to take it and then like run with it, but then it should come out as something positive. So puberty it's a very difficult age. It's a very difficult age. I don't have girls, but I don't have teenage girls. But I just remember from myself and just like through like my professional life of like working with some girls of these age groups, there's a lot that that comes into play. And like you mentioned, and what we spoke about before, social media, it has really been influential in both, I would say, the positive and negative, and it's important that we use it properly. And I think that's like kind of what's important just about social media in general, that it's important that we use it properly. Mm-hmm. So I'll quickly go through puberty, but so like I said, it's the biological capability of reproduction due to hormonal changes that stimulate maturation. So this critical period of rapid growth is strongly dependent on adequate nutrition. Like we said, malnutrition can delay or bring it on or trigger early. And they typically grow through 11 to 14. I apologize for saying that over again. And yeah, so puberty patterns and behaviors. So external influences. So food choices and behaviors are strongly influenced by peers, parents, media, and body image. So body image really starts to come into play here more than it did more than it did in the prepubescent years. Body images starts to really, right, we're starting to grow things. We're starting to become a little bit hippier. Our bodies change, and we're starting to notice that a little bit more. So again, as parents, as caretakers, or as friends, it's important that we help our friends, we help our daughters, remain positive about their body images. And about the foods and the foods that they eat, about nutrition. Skipping meals. So skipping meals is something statistically, actually, at this age group, females are the most likely at this age group to skip breakfast, especially compared to males. And what's really interesting here is that a lot of the times there's this excuse of, well, I'm sleeping late and I like miss breakfast anyway. So then, I'm like, why not just wait till lunch? And, I've spoken with a lot of people and I've worked with families, and I say, well, breakfast doesn't have to be this traditional, lavish meal of, eggs and like toast and, whatever it is, and, or like, pancakes or cereal. It doesn't have to be that. Breakfast can be just, a cheese stick and a piece of fruit, right? Have that as your breakfast. And then have lunch a little bit later. That's not going to fill you for hours and hours on end. So just make sure we get it in there. I don't care, even if you're going to have some nuts, that's going to be your breakfast. I just like to get into that habit. And I tell this to girls all the time that I work with. I like to get into that habit of making sure that we're not skipping meals. I don't want that excuse of, oh, well, I woke up late, because that ends up becoming an excuse. And then girls are like, oh, well, I'm fine skipping breakfast. And then they end up like kind of going on that path of skipping breakfast, and then they get to college and they get into the real world and they're like, oh, well, I always did well without breakfast, so there's no, I'll just continue to skip it. And then you get into this like lifelong pattern, and I've seen it happen, and it's actually happened to me. I had to reteach myself to eat breakfast, and it's a much healthier thing to do. I did see a few questions come in, Vanessa, if you want to take a look at them. And then while you get those, I'll just finish this slide quickly. So eating away. So over a third of nutrient intake takes place away from home at this age group, right? So we see a lot of it happening at school, vending machines, fast food places, corner stores. A lot of it's taking place out of the home. So it's really important that we set like a good example, at this age and even before.
Arielle, let me know when you're ready for the
I'm ready,
questions. Yeah. Okay.
I'm ready.
So the first question, if a teen wants to try a fad diet they see on social media, how should parents approach that? For example, there are a lot of ads on social media promoting shakes and stuff. We've seen a lot of those.
So that's a really, really good question.
Hmm.
And it's tricky. It's really tricky. And, it's good for your teen if they're actually going to come to you and ask you for your permission, because so many times they're going to be doing these things on their own. Um, I think what the really important thing to do at that time is to really go through with them and explain to them, the importance of eating a balanced diet, and go through specifically, look at these shakes and be like, okay, well, you need protein, you need calcium, you need this. Let's see, does this have all of that in there? And like more likely than not, it will not have all of those nutrients in there that they really need, iron and things of that sort. And whole grains
Hmm.
definitely won't have whole grains in there, because they usually don't even put carbohydrates in those types of shakes. And more likely than not, they won't have that. um and and then you just say, okay, well, this is not appropriate for a girl of your age. This is not appropriate. This
Right.
is not appropriate for, because of X, Y, and Z. They don't have this, and this is something, you're a grown girl, you need this, it's important. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is kind of saying, okay, well, why do you feel like you need to do this, right? This is a really
Absolutely.
good opportunity to get into the conversation of, well, why do you
Hmm.
feel like you need to, go on this diet? Why do you feel that you
Right.
want to follow this fad diet?
So
And then
true. I feel like,
yeah,
go ahead. I'm
yeah, no,
sorry.
continue. No, go.
I think the why is so important because sometimes it may not be purely aesthetic. Maybe they're, you know, on the volleyball team and they want more energy. They feel they need more stamina or
Hmm.
they get hungry quicker because they're exhausting a lot of their calories. I think the why is super important because perhaps maybe they need something, as you mentioned, that's more balanced as opposed to a fad shake that probably has a lot of junk in it that's going to make matters worse for them from a dietary
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then also, yeah, and a lot of those shakes have things in there that are not good, right? They have a lot of them
Right.
are tons of sugar and tons of like preservatives and tons of like processed stuff in there. And it's important to like have that conversation as well of like, well, whole food is going to be better and it's healthier. And, there's a lot of opportunity for good conversation there and for positive conversation there
Right.
that revolves around nutrition. So if like your teen does come to you, then I would take that as a time to really like get into that conversation of, first of all, why do you want this? And then, if the answers are what you said of like, oh, I want more stamina, I need more energy. Okay, well, this may not be the right thing for you. Let's think of some other foods that we can add to your diet, some other whole foods that we can add to your diet, that will give you more of that. So I think that, that's a really important thing.
Hmm. Another question, Ariel, that's in line with a diet here. We got a question about certain foods that teens should stay away from. Is caffeine one of them? We know a lot of teens are drinking coffee. Starbucks gets a lot of the teens' money.
Yep. So, this is something I think that a lot of us have learned, like
Mhm.
probably like when we're younger, right? Don't have coffee, don't
Yeah.
have too much soda because caffeine can stunt our growth. Um, I'm not so sure that that's true, but I would definitely limit coffee really until puberty. They can obviously have here and there like a sip or a little bit of yours, but I wouldn't have a teen or a prepubescent teen going into Starbucks every day and getting a caffeinated coffee. And I wouldn't have too much soda either. First of all, the regular soda, I wouldn't have too much of, more just because of the sugar, and it's just a lot of sugar.
Mhm.
Um, and then, the diet is because all of those sugar alcohols are actually really not good for children at all. That's not good for their stomachs. It can cause a lot of like upset GI. It can cause like GI problems and a lot of gastro issues. So there's a lot of reasons, not so much related to the caffeine, um, but really just like with just like the sugars and the sugar alcohols in regular
Mhm.
soda and diet soda. But here and there, those things are okay. But the caffeine itself, yes, I wouldn't overdo caffeine, but I'm not going to say you need to 100% eliminate it out of their diet. But a teen should not be going in daily to Starbucks, or preteen rather, should not be going in daily to Starbucks. And a teen also should not be going into Starbucks daily and getting a coffee.
Right. So talking about sugary drinks, the next question is
Hmm.
about sports drinks for those
Hmm.
teens out there who are playing sports. They're very active and they need a little boost. Are these healthy?
They're not healthy. I'm not going to say that they're healthy, but I don't think there's anything wrong if you're going to be, playing. Let's say you're on a volleyball team, right? We've been going with the volleyball, so let's stick with that. Um, I'm not gonna, if you're playing a volleyball game and you're going to have mostly water, but then you're gonna stick in one of the sports drinks, then that's fine, right? I sometimes understand needing that sugar, needing like a little bit more than just water. That's fine, but no, they're not healthy. I definitely wouldn't say that they're healthy, but there's nothing wrong with here and there putting that, but that should not be the main source of beverage when we're playing sports. We should be having water. Our body needs water. And most of the time water has enough of the electrolytes that we need to
Mhm.
replenish. And that's a lot of the times people say, oh, well, Gatorade has the electrolytes. Well, water has enough to really do that too. But there's other things in the sport drinks, and sometimes people just need that taste and they need a little bit of that sugar, and that's fine. But I would not, it should not be like, let's have 4 bottles of Gatorade,
Right.
4 bottles of a sports drink. It should be primarily water. And then, you can have like a bottle or half a bottle of a sports drink as well, or even diluting some of that sports drink, right? So taking like
Mhm.
a little bit of Gatorade and then filling it up with water, and diluting that a little bit just to get some of that taste, get some of those, electrolytes, and yeah. So all really good questions.
Great tip. Great tip. Our next question, really good one. It's about stevia. Is it okay for young people? And is it true that it's natural?
So yes, it's natural.
Mhm.
Again, these things, stevia still is something that um, can cause a lot of gastrointestinal issues in young children. And it should not be used as like a primary source in anything that kids are eating or drinking. Here and there, it's not going to do too much, but there are kids that have very sensitive stomachs. And if they, you know, eat something that's made with stevia, it can, it can kind of take them off for like a few days. It really really can hurt their stomachs. So stevia should not be used as a primary sweetener for younger kids. And I
Mhm.
almost like dislike so much that it's like been like termed this like healthy sugar alternative, because for kids it's not. So I think it's important to so I think, yeah, I think, hold on, what just came in. Okay, we got another. Oh, I don't know if that came in just to me or to you too. But anyways, we got another question that came in into the other chat box. But yeah, so it definitely should not just be should be used for kids.
Right. And it's funny because when you look at these sugar substitutes and you look at the process that goes into creating them, you almost
Hmm.
wonder, is it just better to moderate your intake of just real natural sugar?
That's that is honestly what I say. I say
Yeah,
moderate real sugar or nothing.
right.
But some people have a different, there are a lot of people that have different approaches, but that would be my approach. My approach would be like moderate, exactly what you said, moderate that intake of real sugar, of cane sugar, and then or use pretty much nothing. But
Right.
it really depends. And that's just me. I'm also somebody who doesn't care for things that are too sweet. So that's just, and I've kind of trained myself to be that way a little bit. So that's just kind of that's my philosophy, but there are so many
Mhm.
different philosophy and approaches on this. So I definitely, yeah. So it depends who you ask. I think we have a few more questions. I want to get
Yeah.
through just the rest of this, and then I definitely want
Okay.
to get to those questions. So maybe let's save, just keep an eye on the questions that come in, and maybe we'll save them just because we're getting a lot of really really good questions. So I'm happy to see this, but I want to get through. We still have so much stuff to get through. So energy needs, so higher calories and protein to support growth, and development. So both like height and lean body mass. And again, a balanced diet, right? They're encouraged to eat a variety of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, dairies, protein. So again, if you have a teen who's coming to you and a teen who's coming to you and saying, I want to become vegan, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to try that fad diet like Vanessa, you mentioned, these are really good times and good opportunities to ask why. So the three very important nutrients here are going to be folate, iron, and calcium. So folate, so many of you probably know, or not, that it's very, very important, during childbearing years and during pregnancy, but it's also really important during puberty. And that's because it's important for protein synthesis needed in growth and development. Iron, it's because we're, for rapid growth, we're losing due to rapid growth and losses of iron during menstruation. It's important that we continue to build up those stores. So iron's going to be super, super important during these years. And calcium's always going to be important. It's super important that we start really building up these calcium stores for long-term bone health. So now we're going to get to childbearing years. If we want to do one, I think we can do one more question. Actually, let's save it. What do you think? Should we save it for the end? Do we have a few? How many more did we get in?
We got about two more or three more, actually.
All right. So maybe let's save them for the end.
Okay.
Just so that we can get through everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Childbearing years and pregnancy. So childbearing years and years, patterns, and behaviors. So we're going to see a lot of weight change during these years. So repeated fluctuations in weight, as well as becoming overweight or underweight. It's very, very common and can greatly impact fertility, right? So a lot of the times when, people are starting to try to have children, one of the first things, if they're having a little bit of difficulty, one of the first things that their doctors will check is their weight. There's a bunch of like different hormone things that they can check, and that's usually actually the second thing that they'll check. But the first thing that they'll check is weight changes, right? Are they too overweight? Are they too underweight? There's so many things that can affect fertility, and weight is really one of them. So again, a balanced diet in these early years are going to be important for these childbearing years. Eating disorders are unfortunately common a lot during these years. So eating disorders and obesity are common for this age group, which may involve excessive exercising, undereating, overeating, binging, purging, a little bit of both, some of all of it. It's very, very common. A lot of that is because there's so much weight fluctuation. It really drives people crazy. So many of these hormones, and it again causes a lot of anxiety that kind of revolves around body image. So it's pretty difficult, but it's a pretty important thing to kind of get ahead of ahead of time. So the hormonal changes that accompany the menstrual cycle influence appetite, metabolism, mood, and energy levels. So there are actually things that specific nutrients that we can and we should be eating during the different parts of our menstrual cycle. So eating for our cycle. So just keep in mind, this is not a comprehensive list at all. And you can kind of look this up and you'll find so many different answers, but this is just what I've learned over the years for the different parts of our cycle, different things that we should be eating. So during this menstrual phase, again, iron containing foods, right? Because we want to make sure that we're building up. This is when we're losing, the most amount of iron through our menses. So, things like spinach, red meat, vegetables, and we want to drink alcohol and caffeine in moderation. And again, this really depends on the type of person, but caffeine actually during this time can cause, sometimes for some people, like excess bleeding. It can cause excess bloating. It can cause just different changes in their body that just don't make them feel good. So it's a good thing just to, kind of tap into yourself and see if this helps or not. Then we have the follicular phase. So we're going to do a lot of fermented foods like kimchi and yogurt, whole grains, quinoa, oats, buckwheat, and rice. And the reason during this phase we want these fermented foods is because we have an excess amount of estrogen that we're metabolizing at this point. And it's very, very hard on our GI system. It's very, very hard on on our microbiome. So we want to kind of rebuild that up. So it's a very interesting thing, and it's not a thing that a lot of people know or do. But it is an important thing because of that extra estrogen that can be a little bit hard on us. Making sure that we're getting those good probiotics and prebiotics. It's a good practice. And then the ovulation phase. So we want to do, this is, specifically for people who are really trying to get pregnant. We want to make sure we're eating foods that are, anti-inflammatory. So raw fruits and vegetables, things that are higher in protein. These just tend to be said to, help give us our greatest chances of conceiving. A lot of the times when there are people who are going through fertility issues, they will be told to go on an anti-inflammatory diet for some time because, it is said that it can be very helpful. So during this time, it's just, a practice that people may want to follow. And in this last phase, the luteal phase, so we want to have magnesium containing foods. And that is because we have actually a higher amount of progesterone at this time, which causes a lot of anxiety. And magnesium is actually said to lower our anxiety. So that's why things like dark chocolate, pumpkin seeds is also very delicious. So can help also with anxiety. So again, these are just, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just things that, over the years I've learned. You're going to find so many different types of foods and, in different people that you speak with and different things that you look up online. Okay. But it's very interesting, I think, to see how food really can be so important. Nutrition is just so important in biology, and it's pretty cool. So pregnancy nutrient requirements. So it varies throughout pregnancy and depends on pre-pregnancy nutrient stores, body size, weight, level of physical activity. So also, which people may not know, is that needs during pregnancy calorie needs are not actually that much higher. A lot of the times people are saying, oh, I'm eating for 2, but that's not actually true. So during the first trimester, we actually don't need any additional calories. During the second trimester, we need about 350 extra calories than we do, not being pregnant. And then in our third trimester, we need about an extra 450. So that's each, it's 2 snacks. It's not, we don't really need that many more calories. Poor maternal nutrition. So it's very important that we make sure we're eating properly, right? So it can affect the fetus, because we use it to help support the mother and then the placenta that, eventually goes to the fetus. And as I mentioned, there's these increased needs for calories, but not too much of an increased. And then there's certain vitamins that we have to really be careful about as well, right? So vitamin A, for example, we have to make sure that we're not eating too much vitamin A. Vitamin A can lead to birth defects. So we're probably not eating too much. So I don't want this to freak anybody out, but it is something to be cognizant of, right? So things like liver, that's the number one example with vitamin A, right? We want to make sure that we're not eating too much of that. And they say it's about the 5,000 IU, which is the unit that we use for vitamin A. So things like retinol, I know when people get facials, they know, tell them not to use anything that has retinol in it. That's a derivative of vitamin A, which is why they say don't use it, during facials or, when you're in any face cream or face washes that you're using during pregnancy. Okay. So we want to make sure we're getting, some highlighted nutrients. There are some others as well. So sodium, we want to make sure that we're, to just make sure we're maintaining water and electrolyte balance. Folate's going to be really, really important, especially in the first few weeks. And even before preconception, it's important because we want to prevent any neural tube defects. Iron's going to be important. It's important for the placenta, for the fetus, to replenish. We want to make sure we're building up a good store for, blood that will eventually be lost during delivery. And then calcium, like we mentioned, calcium is going to be important throughout the life cycle. It's important both for the mother's bones. It's also important for the fetus and for the growth and development of the fetal skeleton and the fetal bones and everything of that sort. So coffee, and Vanessa, you asked the question before about coffee with teens. Mm-hmm. So coffee in pregnancy, it's a pretty big misconception that you can't have coffee. It is totally safe to drink in moderation. And that's actually like 3 cups daily. So most pregnant women wouldn't dare drink 3 cups, or at least with their first. By the time they get to their second or third, maybe. I know with my first, I drank no caffeine, and with my second, I had 1 cup because the thought of not having caffeine was daunting. But it's definitely a misconception that we can't have any caffeine. And reduced intake, it's not associated with better pregnancy outcomes. There are so many studies on this, and you will see so much research on this. And, sometimes you'll see something will say, oh, well, it was associated with a better outcome. But then you look at what the size of the study was, and it was so minuscule. So they're really, in the big studies, it was not associated with better pregnancy outcomes. Okay, so breastfeeding. Again, moderate weight loss can be achieved with a healthy diet and exercise, and without compromising infant weight gain. We actually need the most extra calories with breastfeeding. That's about 500 extra calories a day. And by the way, obviously in pregnancy, if you're having multiples, there's a little bit more leeway there with how many extra calories that we need. But yeah, anyway, so for breastfeeding, we do need a little bit more extra calories. We need to make sure that we're staying hydrated. It's going to be very important for milk production, for letdown, and everything of that sort. And, micronutrient needs. So mothers, both breastfeeding and pregnancy, they should be taking prenatal vitamins as well to make sure they're getting all of their micronutrient needs. Because sometimes it's just not enough to get it in diet, although our hope is that they are. Sometimes it's just not enough. So taking a prenatal vitamin will just make sure we're getting everything that we need to keep our babies healthy. Okay, so I'm sorry I'm going so quickly. I just want to get through to everything, and I want to get to those questions. We will be done in a few minutes. But Vanessa, feel free, obviously still come in and interject anywhere you want. But we're going to get now to postmenopausal and aging. And I really love this topic because, as I mentioned in the beginning, I feel like there's so much focus on, puberty and childbearing age and all of that. But there's not so much focus on postmenopausal and aging, and it's a really, really important age group as it pertains to nutrition. There's so many hormonal changes. There's so much changing in, appetite and things of that sort, and saliva production. So it's a very, very important population that we focus on as it pertains to nutrition. So there's declining senses. So a lot of the times they have a loss of smell or taste. They lose, an appetite. Their hunger cues are a little bit off. Their food preferences change a little bit. Also their thirst mechanism, they have a lower thirst cues and can lead to dehydration and overall lower food intake. And then oral health, the mouth produces less saliva, which slows down the digestion process. And chewing discomfort can impact nutrient intake. So there's a lot of things here that can impact nutrition and what they're eating and what they're consuming. So it's a very important thing that we talk about, and that I guess women in these years are cognizant of and aware of. Older adults do need fewer calories, but the nutrients needs remain the same or they increase, right? So we still have the iron. They're very important iron's going to be very important. They're not losing blood anymore, but it's just an important nutrient to just make sure that we're keeping adequate stores of, because we want to make sure that we're not going to become anemic, because that can lead to a whole host of other health issues. We want to make sure we're getting good fat soluble vitamins. We want to make sure we're getting enough veggies and healthy fats to help with absorption of these fat soluble vitamins. And then fiber. I wanted to leave fiber for the last, because fiber is going to be important throughout the life cycle, but it's really, really important in this age group, because constipation is like one of the number one complaints in postmenopausal women. A lot of the times it's because their metabolisms slow down. And fiber is going to be really, really important to make sure that our digestive process moves along, and that we're staying regular, and we're going to the bathroom regularly, and that we make sure that we don't, that we're not, we don't get constipation, because it can be, again, lead to a whole host of things and can be very uncomfortable. Okay, so I just wanted to bring in a little bit about affordability, but I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, just because, again, affordability is a very important thing for us at Fair Meals. We want to make sure, so some shopping hacks are buying in bulk, right, for things that are going to be staples at our home, like nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, whatever is going to be a staple for you, buy in bulk. Shop the sales. It may take a little bit more time to kind of find the sales, but in the end, we'll end up saving money. It can be very, very helpful. Know when to choose canned. It's going to be also really important. There's a lot of things that, we can have canned at home, they're shelf stable, they stay for a long time, and they're, relatively less expensive. So good things to know, what's going to be good, like proteins, right? Like tuna, salmon, sardines, peas, corn, legumes, things like that. And frozen. Frozen's a really great alternative as well for fruits and vegetables, because they are frozen at peak ripeness. So we don't really lose any nutrients at all. And it's important to know that. So these are all really important. We can meal prep, we can cook in bulk, we can repurpose leftovers, and we can also freeze extras. So these are all just very, very important cooking tips. And affordability, these are things that we can do throughout the life cycle, right? As mothers, as caregivers, we can do this for our teens and our preteens and our teens. And as they get older, we can do this, during childbearing years, and then also postmenopausal. So these are all tips, shopping tips, cooking tips that we can do throughout the life cycle as women. I am not going to go through the recipes now, because I want to get through the questions, but there was just a few recipes here that just kind of highlight some of the nutrients that we spoke about that are important for women throughout the ages. So we have a little grain bowl here, a low sugar yogurt bowl, right, with fruits and nuts and seeds and things like that. And that is it. So now I want to get to the questions. And
yes. All right, let's dive in. So we have a question about carbonated and flavored waters. They seem to be really popular, but how healthy are they? And how frequently should they be used in our diets?
So the thing with them is that as long as there's no sodium and there's sometimes carbonated drinks we'll see that there's sodium, right? So I'm not going to say they're not healthy. Speaking of, I have one second. Sorry about that. They're not unhealthy, but but we definitely don't want to intake we don't want to get sodium through our beverages, right? If we're going to be getting sodium, we want it to be through our food. So I would definitely nix any sort of carbonated beverage that has sodium, also that has sugar. But generally a seltzer that has no sugar, no sodium, they're okay. They're definitely okay. I mean, if you're going to ask a dentist, they're going to tell you something else, because they may not be like as great for our teeth. The carbonation, I think, can do something with our teeth. I'm not really quite sure. I'm not a dentist, but in terms of nutrition, why I'm not so keen on somebody only drinking carbonated beverages is because the bubbles and the carbonation fills us. And a lot of the time, we will end up not eating a balanced meal or a balanced diet because we're full from, these carbonated beverages and these carbonated seltzers. So, a lot of the times I'll tell people, drink water with your meal, or if you don't want to don't want water, drink the carbonated beverages, slowly with the meal, but then really at the end of the meal. And don't drink too much of them, during the day, because they really can fill you. But really with mealtime, my recommendation is to keep them for the end.
Okay. All right. We have a question about the big three: iron, calcium, and folate. We talked about incorporating those into our diet during the puberty and pregnancy cycles, but what is the best source
of folate and iron?
And calcium? We can obviously get them through supplements, but I guess what
Right.
is the
Yes.
best, like,
We can all
source?
get them. So there's no real best whole source. There's a ton of examples of each. It really depends on what foods you like, right? So calcium, obviously, dairy products. So milk, cheese, yogurt, we're generally going to be getting the same amount of calcium through all of them. We can also get calcium through some like, I forget if it's chia seeds or flax seeds. One of them, we can get calcium through there. You may not get as much as you're going to be getting from milk or dairy products, but there's still some calcium in there as well. So it really depends on like your preference. And then things like iron, you can get, lentils are very high in iron. So is red meat is high in iron. Liver's higher in iron. I'm trying to think what else. Leafy greens are high in iron. So it's really your preference. There's no real gold standard for any of those particular nutrients. It's really, really based on your preference. And then what was the last one? Oh, folate. So folate, again, most like cereals, for example, are actually fortified with like folic acid, right? They're going to be fortified with that. So they're going to be in, Cheerios, let's say, or any sort of like grains. You're going to find oatmeal, all of that will have some folic acid in there. Leafy greens are a great source of folate. Lentils also have folate. So there's a ton of foods that have these nutrients, but there's no real gold standard. There's no best source. But obviously some have more than others. But they're all relatively, good sources, especially those three nutrients.
Right. I love this question. It's not even a question, it's a comment. It's from Debbie. It's a statement, really. She says, okay, menopause is definitely tough.
Yes.
Yeah. And as you broke down the cycles, it's crazy because puberty obviously happens like maybe 3 to 5 years, right? We go through that phase. And then pregnancy, we know we have the three trimesters. So, a year, and then you have the 4th trimester after you have the baby, and you have to really make sure you're watching yourself as you sustain this new life. But menopause, I mean, there's perimenopause that can happen for years as you transition into real menopause. And there's like over 50 symptoms that happen to you during that period as you're menopausal. And a lot of that, as you mentioned, are all kind of triggered by certain foods or helped by certain foods. I was talking to someone about this, and they almost suggested, maybe seeing an endocrinologist, because everybody is different. For some people, certain vegetables that would be anti-inflammatory for you may not be anti-inflammatory for someone else. And they're all healthy, but they just
100%. It's honestly like trial and error. I say that with a lot of people, and it's like, and that's what I love about the life cycle, right? Because when we have babies, sometimes the babies will be sensitive to certain foods or to certain types of foods, right? They'll be sensitive to dairy. They'll have an allergy to dairy or soy or whatever it is. And then as we go through the life cycle, then we kind of like figure out, okay, what are those sensitivities? But then we go into this this, especially, for women, but also men go through this where they, later in life, and like their systems change a little bit, and then we can also get new intolerances and new sensitivities, and especially for women who are in these perimenopausal or these menopausal years, foods kind of like trigger different symptoms, as you mentioned. And we almost have to relearn, like, what are these new sensitivities that I have? And that's like, again, I mentioned this, and when I was going through schooling, the life cycle was so interesting to me, because there's so many things that we can take, we can look at as like from babies to age, to older adults, that are like so similar and so like synonymous almost. And I just like found like those two things were very interesting, because I know there are a lot of women who go through menopause who really are triggered by certain foods, and we have to like relearn that and be like, okay, well, I just went through my life and I like had one set of intolerances or sensitivities, and now I have to learn what are my other intolerances and sensitivities. So that was a really interesting point that you brought up.
Yeah, it's like with every stage you mentioned, you have to relearn your body. You
Exactly.
relearn your body after the puberty process. After you have a child, you're introduced to a brand new body. And then you hit 35, then things start to shift. And then certainly as you get into menopause, it's a lot about watching the numbers, your thyroid numbers, glucose, because all of those things are kind of signs as to how your body is reacting. And if you can get a handle on those as soon as possible, and like you said, identify what you respond favorably to, sooner the better.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was a great comment. I agree. Do we have one more question?
Yes, we have a substitute question. So this is a question
we'll do one more question, because it's getting late. Yeah.
So milk substitutes. So there's pea protein, there's coconut milk, oat milk. Which is the most nutritious substitute though for brain development?
So, for brain development, are you talking about like for like fetal brain? Is that fetal brain development? Or are we talking about
I think
our
for
own
women.
brain development, for women's brain development?
Our brain.
I'm not quite sure what's the best, but I'm not quite sure the answer to that. That's the truth. But what I will say, and this is what probably any dietitian will say, is as it pertains to milk substitutes, we want to make sure we're getting things, and this probably can answer that question. Actually, we want to make sure that the milk substitutes we're getting are fortified with vitamin D, and vitamin D can be very helpful in brain development as well. So that could, I guess, answer this question a little bit. There's so many brands out there, and we need to know what we're looking for. So if you see that there's vitamin D in there, right, it's fortified with vitamin D, then that's usually, that's like a good sign. We want to make sure, obviously, there's too much added sugar. We want to make sure that there aren't too many added preservatives. There are the more known milk alternatives, more known brands. And those are typically, there's a reason for that, because they don't have a lot of those added sugars and preservatives, and they have the vitamin D and everything of that sort. But usually it's a preference thing. So the milk alternatives, any dietitian will tell you this. Everybody reacts very differently to different milk alternatives. So whichever is best for you, that's what you should use. If brain development is something that you're looking for, which is not, generally what we're something that we need to be looking for when we're looking for milk alternatives, but I would say then, look for something that is fortified with vitamin D. It's going to be my answer.
Right. Are you into DHA? I know that there's certain milks that have the added DHA for brain development.
So yes, but you're not going to find that as much in the milk alternatives. You'll see that the DHA is milk, you'll find in regular milk, right? But you won't really see that in any milk alternatives. So don't look for that, because you won't find it.
Yeah, I know some moms are kind of split on the DHA for their
Yeah.
babies and toddlers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do. I buy with the DHA, but
Mhm.
you know, whether or not it means anything, I don't know. But you know, I guess I fall for the marketing there. But you know, whatever I can do to whatever
Right.
healthy
Yeah.
fat and whatever I can do, you know, to whatever, that's what I do. But yeah, so you know, as it pertains to that, I would say, yeah, just you know, make sure that you know a lot of those brands, like I said, a lot of those more popular brands are generally going to be okay, and they're not going to have, you know, too much added stuff that we don't want in there.
Right. And that was our last question.
Okay, so thank you all. We went a little bit over time today. But thank you for bearing with us. I know this is a lot of information. Feel free to email me. I think my information was here. Feel free to email me. You can email me at arielle@fairmeals.org or info@fairmeals.org. I look at them both. Happy to take any questions, happy to get any DMs on social media. Again, I know this is a lot of information, but this will be up on the website as well. So yeah, so thank you guys. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Arielle, for having me.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you so much.
Good night.
All right, good night.